One country tried to colonize the other. They fought one of the most iconic battles in African history. Yet today, they work together as partners in diplomacy, business, and regional cooperation. How did Ethiopia, the only uncolonized African country, build a modern relationship with Italy, a former enemy, on the battlefield? And what can Africa can learn from this transformation? To understand this relationship, we must begin with the battle that changed history and follow a journey from resistance to reconciliation and then to strategic partnership. Now, I would like to start with you with the foundation, the base of everything, which is the Battle of Adwa. Now, the Battle of Adwa, it's at a time when much of Africa was being colonized. Ethiopia stood apart. Emperor Menelik II united diverse forces and faced Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896. The victory preserved Ethiopia's sovereignty and inspired anti-colonial movements across the continent and Pan-African movement globally. Adwa was more than a military victory. It shaped Ethiopia's political identity, a nation negotiating with the world as an independent state, as an uncolonized state. Now, how did Ethiopia has this relationship with Italy? History could have remained frozen in hostility, right? But instead, Ethiopia gradually transformed rivalry into diplomacy. Because Ethiopia remained uncolonized, it approached later relations from a position of national confidence. Engagement with Italy developed through dialogue, mutual interests, and long-term state-to-state interaction. This relationships was not built on forgetting history. Rather, it was on defining it or redefining it. Now let's ask why this path was harder for many of our brothers and sisters in Africa or for many African countries in the continent. Many African nations gained independence after long colonial administration that shaped political institutions, economic systems, trade networks, and even their borders. Building equal partnership required rebuilding states and economies while still managing inherited structure. See, that was a difficulty for the rest of the African nation. Ethiopia's historical continuity gave it a different starting point, one that influenced how it negotiated internationally. Now let's fast forward and look at the modern Ethiopia-Italy partnership. Now, this modern Ethiopia-Italy partnership, we can look at it point by point. Number one, let's look at the repatriation and historical recognition. The return of the obelisk of Aksum symbolized an important step towards acknowledging history and building trust between the two countries. As a second point, let's look at the business partnership. Today, cooperation is visible in major projects. For example, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, one of the contractors of building this grand mega dam in Ethiopia with an Italian construction company known as Salini, together with others. So this was not aid. It was a business relationship built on mutual economic interests. Now, number 3, let's look at the leadership chemistry that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has, which is one of a kind. You need that kind of chemistry in diplomacy and in working together. And that's what you see between these two leaders. Now let's unpack it. What do I mean by that? Modern diplomacy is often shaped by leadership dynamics. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni have developed a working relationship that has accelerated bilateral engagements. Their meetings in Rome and in Addis Ababa helped turn political dialogue into concrete cooperation. In 2025, reciprocal visits strengthened this momentum, signaling trust and consistent high-level communication between the two governments. Now, the last point I would like to point out in the current relationship between Italy and Ethiopia is the Mate Plan, which is Italy's approach to Africa. Now, what is the Mate Plan? Italy's Mate Plan, it's launched in 2024. It focuses on investment-led partnerships across energy, infrastructure, agriculture, renovation, and development projects across African countries. The plan presents itself as a cooperation based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than traditional aid models. Now, again, fast forward, let's look at the current Italy-Africa summit that was held over the weekend. Now, in this Italy-Africa summit, there are 2 points I want you to pay attention. A symbolic turning point came when the Italy-Africa summit was hosted in Addis Ababa, the first time the summit took place on African soil, as opposed to these summits exported outside of the continent, which we have seen through the years. Africa's heads of state were not summoned to travel to someone else's land. Africa was hosting the conversation on its soil at its convenience. The summit coincided with the African Union gathering, showing strategic coordination and reducing unnecessary costs, while maximizing diplomatic impact. Ethiopia demonstrated that Africa can host world-class summits and state dinners at the highest level, projecting confidence and diplomatic capability. That's what we have seen on the state dinner hosted by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for all participants of the heads of states that came from Africa, and also Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Now, what can Africa learn from this relationship between Ethiopia and Italy that are now allies, but formerly during colonial time were enemies? Now, I want to put this point by point. This is a relation that they have is strategic, and strategy matters. What do we mean by strategy? Number 1, historical confidence as a leverage. You see, using history to strengthen negotiation, not to remain trapped by it. That's what you see in the relationship between Ethiopia and Italy. Number 2, choosing partnership models deliberately. Economic cooperation can be structured to serve national priorities. You can take an example in which the Italian construction company Salini took the project of building Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This is advancing and prioritizing national priorities. Number 3, diplomacy on equal footing. Hosting major summits in Africa changes the psychological balance of international relations. That's what Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, by hosting that high-level state dinner that represented not only Ethiopia, but Africa in the world, demonstrated. It matters psychologically. It shows for the world Africa is capable of hosting such state events. Number 4, leadership relationships matter. Consistent dialogue between leaders can unlock opportunities faster than institutions alone. Now, this means what you see, what you have been saying between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Giorgia Meloni, it's not that far since they came to power, but we have seen that reciprocated visits between Rome and Addis Ababa and also others. Now, number 5, turning symbolism into policy. Repatriation of the artifacts, the Aksum obelisk, summits, and business projects all reinforce trust when aligned. Now, allow me to say this in conclusion. Adwa symbolized resistance. Today's partnership symbolizes transformation. Ethiopia and Italy show that history does not always dictate the future. The real question now is, can more post-colonial relationships between African countries and their former colonial powers, that being European countries, evolve from hierarchy into partnership? I will leave you with that. And please comment below your view. But for me, thank you very much for tuning in and for your time. And I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.